Welcome to Product Rising. I'm Elizabeth Ames, the executive producer of Product Rising and the former CEO of Women in Product. At Product Rising, we focus on providing meaningful information and insightful conversations about how to succeed in product and advance your career. If you find this information helpful, please follow us and recommend us to others. For more information about women in product, please visit womenpm.org or join our community. Links are provided in the show notes. This episode is the first interview in a new series focused on building professional visibility. The series was created and is hosted by Shyvee Gupta. Shyvee is an experienced product leader, having worked in a range of large tech companies like Amazon, Intuit, Oracle, and Tesla, as well as smaller startup companies like Matrix and It's On. Our guest in this episode is Shyvee Shi, Principal Product Manager at Microsoft, where she has launched Microsoft's first AI community learning program, scaling to over 1,500 participants across 16 business functions in 6 months. Prior to joining Microsoft, Shyvee spent over 7 years at LinkedIn, where she pivoted her career from consulting into product management, developed a LinkedIn learning series on productivity for PMs, and where she built a very large and active community of product managers. Maybe some of you were a part of that. I'll let Shyvee and Shyvee take it from here.
Hey Shyvee, welcome to the podcast. Let me start with a very bold question. Tell what's the most significant risk that you've taken in your career and how did it pay off?
That's a great question. It's a big one, right? I think one of the biggest risks I took is probably changing my mindset and putting myself out there, sharing about my story and writing posts on LinkedIn. Why that was the biggest risk was because, like many people grew up in an Asian culture. I think I was raised to be very humble, very hardworking, never draw attention to myself. The nails that stick ahead, like gets hammered down, was kind of the teaching that I had for years. So yes, people reach out to me for career advice over the years, but I mostly mentor people quietly, like behind the scenes. But in 2021, at the sort of midst of COVID pandemic, and it was also during a pretty critical career transition that I have pivoted into product, which I'm happy to share more about during this podcast. I've decided to just challenge myself, challenge this cultural script that I grew up with, and start posting publicly on LinkedIn about what I learned, my career journey, and my story. I certainly felt very uncomfortable and unnatural at first, but that helped me, scale my way of giving back or sharing career advice at scale instead of doing it one-on-one. It allows me to reach tens and thousands who aspire to play big. And I think it didn't just grow my visibility, for example, but it also really brought a lot of opportunities. I had a course on LinkedIn Learning. I launched a learning series, a podcast of over 70,000 subscribers and listeners. I interview close to 100, I think, leaders and industry practitioners. Got the job that I'm offered at Microsoft right now. It really shaped my identity. And last year, published my first book with 2 other co-authors, and then just a lot of other opportunities to, having access to leaders and really shape my identity as someone who builds in the public.
That sounds amazing. By the way, you mentioned about changing the mind shift. What led you to change the mind shift? What was that trigger?
Yeah, this is a great question. Just travel back on the memory lane. I think, like many others, right? There are a couple components to it. Earlier in my career, I often watch others get recognition for ideas that maybe I've spoken up or quietly contributed to, but then the work wouldn't just speak for yourself. You've got to learn how to advocate for your work in the most authentic way so that others understand your value, because silence just doesn't scale. So I think some of that mindset I learned from like early experience and learning, okay, it's really important to figure out a way to speak up without and advocating for myself without feeling like I'm promoting my work and my team's work. I think the moments that really con was during COVID. I think when two major things happened. One was I pivoted. I was already 2 years into LinkedIn, building a lot of our sales systems and processes and product. But I really wanted to build learner-facing product, and I was very passionate about education, being the first generation in my family to attend college, to come to study abroad in the US. But the organization was new, right? And I had to kind of start over in that transition. And it was COVID. So everybody was just behind the Zoom screen. So I was eager to find my footing in a pure remote and virtual environment. So at the time, I had my manager and my team's blessing and support to share on LinkedIn, because it was also writing with the time that LinkedIn was trying to test a knowledge creator strategy. And so I thought, hey, I just joined the org. I want to be a power user so that I can doc while learning how to challenge myself and put myself out there and build leverage online. I think it was also during the period where all of us were stuck at home. So we started subscribing for a lot of newsletter. Lenny was just taking off right before the pandemic. I started to follow his journey. I started to follow a lot of other leaders like W, who's one of the board members of WIP, and many other what you call influencer or thought leader online. And I studied their journey, and I just thought, wow, I really want to start building like this brand equity or this leverage online to create options for myself, because a part of me really wanted to coach people or teach or write. This is where my creative zone sort of balance out the day-to-day grind of product management. And being a pivoter myself, I have a lot of story to share, right? The trade-off that I have to make inside my career. So there were just a lot of things, both technical and mindset, that I could share. So I thought, why not? That would be a good opportunity. Right place, right time.
That's the best thing you did. Yeah. So tell me, I'm really motivated to hear more on like what platforms did you use? It looks like LinkedIn was the main accelerator where you started like reaching out to the professional network to share your insights. And since you were working at LinkedIn, so it was like win-win situation, putting the product, getting it. But did you use anything else as well? And like throughout your journey since 2020?
The way I chose LinkedIn, to your point, like it was, I just joined the product org. I wanted to learn the product. I want to support a strategy. And a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing are more professional related versus every other platform that have its own sort of pros and cons and its own flavor, right? TikTok was much more video focused. I was more shy on camera and I wanted to do text-based. Feels easier for me. Instagram is more visual and a little bit more consumer retail goods versus career advice. At least I haven't seen much of it until the last 2 years. So I think I just naturally fall into that platform. And it also reduced people's angst or criticism around why are you posting, on other platforms. So maybe that's what I'm telling myself. But at the time, I started out that way. Over time, I tested a little bit with YouTube because of the learning series that I'm interviewing people. So it's very natural for me to put those videos out there. Now, if someone to start anew, though, I do think that AI has got to a point that we can really, create multi-purpose content for different platforms. So for example, a good way to grow your thought leadership could be interviewing or being on a podcast, right? Being like you, like what the role that you're playing. Then you can take that you can record it, post it on YouTube. So then it becomes a video, and then you can take snippets of it and post it on Instagram and talk to become shorts. And then snippets of it could also become carousels that you can share over time. And then the transcript of our discussion can then turn into a newsletter on Substack or Medium, as well as a LinkedIn post in various formats. So back then, it would take a lot of work to get that done. But right now, I think with a lot of these AI tools, it gets much, much easier to share across platform.
Yeah, I hear you. It's very important to be focused, and you did your A/B testing, and I think LinkedIn is the platform where you have your kind of customer base or persona you're targeting. That sounds good. I have another interesting question. So, did you start this whole visibility journey from the organization to the public? Like, was it inside out or outside in? That like you started posting on LinkedIn and then the opportunity started surfacing within the company itself? Or were you like it was like you're popular in the company? I
Actually,
don't
a little
know.
bit of both. I would
Okay.
say, yeah, I think I started out, I would say motivated because of myself, not because of company mandate, but the company was driving the knowledge creator strategy, which I would say I had the privilege to be part of that movement
Mhm.
because there was less of a pressure, because we can get into that too. Like a lot of people reaching out to me and say their manager feels very weird if you're getting too active on LinkedIn, right? Because are you trying to get recruiters' attention and whatnot? I feel like it was a little bit easier for me to navigate that resistance because of these internal sort of like, let's talk through our product. So if you can find the bandwidth to actually share, that's kudos to you that you can do that, right? So I think I was motivated. So I started sharing. But actually, the first time I started sharing, I remember it was the summer of 2021, right after the July 4th Independence Day. So looking back, it's like 5 years ago. Then I started a 30-day post experiment that I wanted to build a habit of every day I have something to share. I wasn't trying to grow audience or anything. I was just curious, just trying to check the box that I won't be regretting, if I'm not try. So I focused on sharing like bite-sized things that I found interesting, like career story. That full months, nothing actually went viral. It was pretty lame if it compares to my some of the best times in my most viral trajectory of my growth. But it did change me. I made like three deep connections with people who reach out. I built sort of a habit, a publishing muscle that I feel comfortable putting myself out there. And then I proved to myself that I can figure out an algorithm, like a habit of sort every week that I could show up consistently. So then the next month, I collaborated with another fellow PM and we focused on a targeted topic versus everything across the board. So at the time, the topic was productivity because we thought that a lot of people would need it too. So, and during that period, I had one post that went viral. So then from there, I saw the power of like, okay, what do I need to say to keep iterating and find that content market fit? So then after that month, I knew that I really need a niche down to talk about things that would be most valuable for my audience. Just like any product builder, right? You talk about product market fit, we're talking about content audience fit. So for me at the time, it was my transition journey. It was the near and dear to my heart. And it's also the easiest and the most authentic to me that I have the most thing to share. Like I didn't need to try to be a guru, right? Or someone who like self promote. I just share what I wish I had known, how I prepared, like all the materials and resources that I leveraged. And it's that honesty that really builds the trust. And it's where the rocket ship starts because I was starting to get more and more popular. LinkedIn was a well-respected platform for career stories, and I was a PM at LinkedIn. So it was kind of, again, right place, right time plays a big part in that journey as well. And then from there, that productivity series I told you about morphed into a LinkedIn Learning course. And because I have a LinkedIn Learning course, then it creates more visibility within the org. So like, wow, this PM has a course. And so I doc through that course marketing and course production process and the whole discovery space I'm building on LinkedIn Learning. So that gets a lot of attention. And then when we were doing a venture bet to test how can we have more live programming? So a lot of LinkedIn Learning course at the time was very much like a MOOC, right? Online education, very passive consumption. So we're talking about how can we bring individual like instructors live and then learn with the instructor. And I said, you know what? How about I pilot one for the learning series? So I was the architect and the brain behind a lot of that. But it's also at that point servicing two dual purpose of what the company needs to test a venture bet, piloting best practices, sharing out our instructor, but also it helps fuel my personal aspiration for building this leverage for myself. So that was again, I would say it's a privilege to be able to build such symbolic relationship. Lots of people do not have this privilege, but I'm happy to talk about some of the other ways to share on social media and how to think about it.
Yeah, and I think the world is a little different now because everybody is posting. I see my LinkedIn has so many influence with 100,000 is like just a common thing. So tell me if someone wants to start today and not only compete, because people also have this attention span, right? Like initially I used to be very excited, I want to content, but now there's so much content that I'm like, okay, what to do? So I think it is harder and harder now, though we have AI and everything, but I still think the original content has its value. You can use AI to make it polished, but you have to have originality. Any suggestions on how our listeners, if somebody is interested, wants to crack the code in this era?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely sense the change. And not just AI, like make it so much easier to create content. There's also younger people have more energy that spend a lot of time creating, or the algorithm also change from time to time. And you just never know which direction and how it's going to change. So in those moments, I actually think that building visibility for the sake of building visibility is not the right approach. And I also think the follower count is very much a vanity metric. I mean, it feels good in moments, but it's not sustainable. To me, I think it comes back to what is your true north or your why of creating content to the world. If your true north is trying to be popular or make money, which a lot of people are, then your strategy is going to be pretty different from someone who's genuinely wanted to share. I have actually, in fact, met a lot of people. I started out having access to circles of people who have a lot of followers or continue very successful growing their following. Some slow down as well. But then I actually started going more and more into circles where they don't have a lot of following, but are building very successful businesses as coaches or, thought leaders themselves. I think the idea is, especially in the AI era when everybody can create and content is just becoming a prompt away from ChatGPT and the like, I think it's really important that you own your story, you understand why you want to show up. There's a bigger purpose to it, and show up consistently this way so that you can then basically protect yourself from a lot of the other voices that will come in that might drown out what you really want. And keeping in mind is sometimes it's not about quantity of people, right? Like the followings, but really about are you presenting the right content to the right audience so that it gives you opportunity, whether it's in front of a new job or coaching clients or whatnot.
Yeah, it's like building a product here where you have to have your goals very, very clear. Why are you doing something? And then you find a strategy.
Yeah, I also think that content creation, even though people can get fast following, quick on the platform, and many people fall into that game. I get asked those questions a lot. I try not to play that game. So if you ask me, I mean, I can point to direction. I'm happy to share like how you would play it, but I haven't really been in that house for maybe the past 2 years. I really think content creation is very much a long. When I say long, I put a lot of zeros, long game. And then you need to exercise what I call strategic patience in trying to be true to yourself and build what you really want. If you are wanted to some quick wins, it's a different strategy and different mindset. And there's different ways to play it. So that's what I learned actually through my experience.
Okay, yeah, this so sounds like there are pros and cons. Let's shift gears a bit, going back to visibility. Tell me, what's the biggest misconception that people have about building the professional visibility? Like from your perspective, did you had any when you were starting out? Maybe in LinkedIn, it was like it sounds like the environment was very conducive to that, supportive of that. But still, did you have any fears? Did you know here you are going, or it all happened?
Yeah, I have zero expectations for follower growth. Like I
Okay.
told you, the first months I tried, I didn't really get any traction, but I focus on the why. So I think some of the biggest misconception that I heard over the years, including myself early on, was that a lot of people feel like you need to be experts or an extroverts to be exceptional, to be visible and to share. But in truth, people spend hours and hours sitting in their head thinking, I'm going to share something, not even drafting the first draft. That's another couple of tens of hours. So most of the time, a lot of people reaching out to me and say they really want to share. They spend all this time taking courses, doing all this thing. And I ask, did you even share one post? No. And then even that first post, they spend so many hours crafting. And I think that's the biggest conception. It's how you get started. Because And the visual that I like to share with people is that most of us think about, we're going to share on LinkedIn like this big bubble that consume you. But most of the people on LinkedIn are going to spend a tiny dot of energy and attention to what you share. So instead of focusing on what others people think or how they're going to perceive you, judge you if you're not, extroverted enough, expert enough, I think the most resonant content actually come from people sharing while they're still in the arena or they have been there, done that, and just that one step, tiny step ahead. It's not like they have to be, the Andrew Ng of the world, right? Like people connected to progress, not perfection. So if you can share your mistakes, the fumble that you make, your journey. Actually, at LinkedIn, there was an offsite. I started this viral campaign within my group. I was teaching people how to write a viral post. That was only 6 months into my journey. So, one of the posts I told people, you do not need to learn any trick and you will guarantee virality, is I asked people to write their journey. That was a PM offsite. So I said, why do you say start with my journey into product management, and then start writing your journey in like bullet points format. And so there was about 10 people and at the offsite, two of them was willing to publicly share, and then others only share privately. Two of the people who publicly share inspire, I think, 50 more people to write their version of the story. So it was a simple exercise. Like my manager actually did share his. Within an hour, he had like I think 500 likes or some crazy.
I love the
Maybe
idea. It's just so
3,000.
inspiring, right? Because I remember when I came to Valley around 12 years, 10, 11, 10, 12 years ago, everybody wanted to be a product manager and wanted to crack the code. I was one of them. I'll admit that. I came from East Coast where everybody was in consulting. So there was a big mindset shift. And it sounds very like fancy, the career from outside, but the journey is also always not so easy. It has its own challenges. So I think it could be interesting. I love it. It's a great way to learn about people behind the scenes, also not just, okay, this is your perfect LinkedIn. And
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, Shivi, you mentioned number of followers is a vanity metric, and I 100% agree. But still, you have like 120,000 followers, which is not small. I want to know, like, how do you nurture these all relationships that you have built over the time? Let's start there.
Sure. I did not foresee that I'll be able to grow that much following. I was following the momentum when things started to grow and double down on it. Those were 2021, 2022, and 2023. I think I had like a rocket ship, right? And that's when, it was the right place at the right time. I think, very few people were posting on LinkedIn and there's no AI. I show up and, posting consistently and then using a lot of like iteration testing. I was having fun. I was like testing different type of posts. I'm like, which one's going to go viral? Why not? So I had a lot of fun. So doing a lot of experiment. I'm using LinkedIn Fee basically as an A/B test ground and then launch like other products, like learning series that were quite well liked. And at the time, like Lanny was just starting his own podcast and there's no other podcast. So, the learning series where I invite guests and put them on the screen, people can then live ask them question. It feels like a very much interactive format. So I think at the time when I grow and leveraging the audience is mostly through, try and error, consistency, showing up, and then really, not just make it about myself, but really like make others having access to the expertise or the assets that I had at the time. So that was, I guess, like era one of my follower growth. I think over the past 2 years, my strategy has shifted a little bit for a lot of reasons, like where it gets much more intense. So for me, keep showing up is my way of giving back to the community. But I also like to say that for a long time, I wasn't able to spend a lot of time on building the community other than showing up, producing the content. That was enough work that I just couldn't do a lot more. But now with my role at Microsoft, I feel like I actually is doing this passion project as a full-time job to try to carve out strategic leverages within the company. So again, another privilege I would like to recognize. So I was able to build a community, and do a lot of using my creativity to design learning curriculums, to engage this community, show up a lot more, in different events or congratulating people, witnessing their transformation. We have hundreds and thousands of testimonials after 2 rounds of the program. And right now, trying to productize that experience, inspire more people on the community. So I definitely think that at the beginning of my journey, it's building on that momentum and writing with it. So it's like 0 to 1 and then 1 to whatever, 100K. And then this past 2 years, it's a little bit more inward looking, more reinvention, focus on quality engagement, and smaller scale. We're still talking about thousands of people, but much more personal touch through the offering that I'm building with Microsoft Teams.
Basically, I'm learning 3 things here. One is really consistency. If somebody who wants to do it, is life happens, but you have to be consistent. Second, provide value. Don't focus too much on having a particular metric or followers, but really provide value, because these days there's another challenge. Actually, I think it's challenge with AI that anybody could create anything.
Yes.
So like how you stand out. And from my own experience, I have seen, like when I was interviewing, for example, I had some like, okay, how do you as a PM really address technical questions? And that post went viral. I was just dumping down my thing like, okay, let's just post it, because many friends used to ask. So I had no intention, but just created. You also mentioned third thing, which is testing, doing different tests and being first. I think that would be a fourth one. Like if you have an idea, just go, don't be scared. So if I'm building like, okay, these are the few things like Shivee's framework, which aligns.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
I think also there's 2 visuals or analogies that I like to share, I think could help folks. One is during COVID, I used to follow this visualized value accounts where they use simple visual to show. So the visual that it shows is like your social following is like, let's say this is what like you're following, and this is like number of posts you post. So it's gonna start like this until it goes up. Right? So for a long time, it's gonna not get a lot of follower, and most people would give up right at the tipping point of an inflection point. But you need to recognize that journey of that long time. And so overnight success is overrated, is what I'm saying. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is an analogy that I saw. Most people in the old days, when you open a physical store, right, you would want to plan months for that grand opening. Have flowers, photographer, you have people line up in front of the store before it opens. But nowadays, I think launches or even this writing your first post or your 10th post feels much less like a grand opening. It feels much like I'm going to just test and see, if I put out a menu, would people come into my restaurant and eat? What's their favorite dishes? You're going to test. So a lot of people come to me for advice on like, hey, I drafted this one newsletter. I haven't full share with anybody because they're too scared or whatnot. And then they told me they draft this a whole plan about what they want to create, how they want to create, took all these courses. I'm like, just post it, because you will very soon notice whether you get a lot of traction, great. Or most of the time, you might get a lukewarm traction, like 12 likes. And then you're like, is that good or not good enough? Or maybe because of the first time you're posting, you might get a 35 or 50 likes. And you're like, okay, that's decent traction. Should I keep going? Should I not? So you have a lot of those moments. And you're going to have to just try it before you know.
It's like really getting the MVP out, like
Exactly.
build the products. Really, one has to change their thinking from a perfectionist to more iterative. So I think it's really like building a product. I'm learning more and more, actually nothing more than different, right?
Yeah, show a prototype. It doesn't even have to be an MVP.
Yeah. Well said. I also want to know a bit more about your current role. You mentioned you gave me some glimpses. Well, it sounds very fancy. I'm just curious to learn more.
Yeah. I like to say my role is kind of untraditional right now. It's what I call, or my husband like to call it, future of work kind of product builder. I think I am actually wearing a lot of different hats. I try to, build products or build, on for community, but I'm also doing a lot of curriculum design, which is a personal passion of me, to design how we make it fun for people to learn. I'm doing a lot of community building on our platform. growth marketing, using this as a way to help drive more top of funnel traction, how to facilitate different people to connect together through member directory, coffee chats, and small group projects. So designing different experience to allow that interaction to happen. So every day I just open my laptop and I start voice dictating. I never really type anymore. So my work covers so many aspects of designing the strategy to scale, asking for budget to scale, but also down to like each week, during the program, how do we incentivize people to shooting videos of avatar version of myself to get people to sign up for our program, and then testing various tools myself, talking to experts, invite them to the community. I think I don't know, I'm like a founder inside a big company, if you ask me.
Very interesting place to be. It's not a typical role, it encompasses many different things. Thanks for sharing. It sounds super interesting. So, Shyvee, tell me, you mentioned you come from a very different background and now you're a speaker, a moderator, and host of a variety of these events. Was this like speaking skill very natural to you? You were always comfortable? If not, what did you do to get to this level where you are today?
Yeah, great question. It's funny because 2 years ago, I wrote a post about how to speak up without freaking out. Because apparently 75% of people, I read a study in the US, consider public speaking as their number one fear,
Yes.
more than death
Yeah,
itself.
I read that too, and I was very surprised by the
Yeah,
number.
so I think definitely, speaking in front of a big group of people could, I have stage fright from time to time. Actually, my first learning series was interviewing Jonathan Rochelle, JR. He was the VP of LinkedIn Learning at a time. So we volunteered him to be my first guest. But it was really funny because for people who know him, he was the founder or co-founder, I should say, of Google Sheets. I don't know how many years ago, 12, 20 years ago. And so he stayed at Google as a director of product for a while. And then he became, I think, the CPO for Zapier. So he's a well-known person, very kind. But
Mhm.
even then, I remember the night before that show, I have practiced so many times in my mind. I couldn't sleep. The morning I woke up, I had a little something on my eyelid that is very visible, very red. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to have to cancel or embarrass myself in this public virtual, series because I'm going to look so weird. I'm going to lose my shit and just like not able to, share. But I think over the years, I learned a lot of tips on how to speak up and project confidence and optimism. I think I summarize it in the framework of brave, which I thought it was really great because you need to be brave, for to manage your anxiety during stage and fight of stage fight.
Tell us more about Brave. I'm curious.
Yeah, so B stand for, breathing
Okay.
slowly and deeply. So I do the 4x4 breathing technique. So I would like inhale 4 second, hold for 4 second, exhale for a
Four
second.
box, 4x4 box,
Yeah, and
box
then I
breathing.
repeat 4 times before, like 10 minutes before. And then R in Brave stands for reframe. So a lot of us think of speaking, as like this nerve-wracking situation, but a lot of times I really think of it like having a conversation. Like
Mm.
we are having a conversation right now, right? It's less about me, making people feel like I'm such a great person, like, but I'm actually sharing my knowledge and wisdom and journey with the world, So be the force. May the force be with you. So
Mhm.
every talk or speaking engagement, I treat it as an act of service, not so much performance. I think that
Mhm.
really helps. And then the A in Brave stands for audience connecting techniques. So a lot of times I want to invite, again, it speaks to the reframing of conversation, right? How do you invite the audience to join you, to ask you a question, to, try to focus on how can it be a more interactive and collaborative session, even if it's just the two of us speaking. I'm constantly thinking, what do people need to know? What would be helpful for them? So then it takes the pressure over, you channeling your energy into more how can you connect with your audience.
Rather, you move into the helping others mode versus being in a
Exactly.
self-conscious mode. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
you're like less self-conscious, less focused on yourself. V stands for visualizing success. So you're gonna, so that was what happened overnight, right? I was like trying to visualize, okay, how do I get started? What do I say first, second? How do I feel the energy, the excitement? Even if I'm doing virtually, most of my talk have been virtual because of, what happened over the past few years. So get yourself into that mode of like seeing people smiling, learning from you, that kind of vibe. And then last but not least is E, really for engage in a more what I call focused practice.
Mhm.
So for people who are introvert in particular, I say I'm actually in between. I was an extrovert in my early 20s. And then over the years, I think once I get into my 30s, I'm getting more and more introvert these days. And so I have a good balance, I think, between the two. I do need a lot of recharge time. But for introvert, I think it's helpful to like recall yourself, and it feels very uncomfortable, very odd the first few times, but you only really need to do the first few times the hard way. And then you start to realize how much more you can change. Like where you look at the camera, the opening, are you using a lot of filler words? Are you rambling a lot? Are you establishing eye contact? Like your energy, your projection, your tone. For women, we tend to like upspeak. That happened to me from time to time too. And then when you can try that, and obviously some folks work with coaches, like communication coaches. I didn't have one at the time, but you can start to get more awareness of how you speak and then deliberately practice each part. I think this apply not just to public speaking, but also even to interviews, to executive presence, right? How you project yourself. So I think there's a lot that we could learn there.
Yeah, I loved your framing of this brave framework, a constant reminder.
Thank you.
Yeah, and breathing, I think it's always like how grounded you are. It's actually very, very important, which people sometimes just ignore, including most of us, right? But these things matter more. I think women are more self-conscious. It's our own attention where we are drawing, and then if you're constantly bothered, we have to move from there towards helping others. If I have to summarize, it looks like it's a mix of some things we need to do before, like visualization specifically is something you can't do in the moment,
Mhm.
little before, then breathing just before the event, and then other things you have to constantly remind yourself.
It's a lot of a hybrid of like mindset in the moments, like what you need to do. So it touches different aspects
Are
of
you a bit
public speaking.
spiritual, Shivi?
Yes.
I also feel myself as spiritual, and I think that has helped my journey more, where I wouldn't say I'm not caring, but it's carefree, not careless. I think there's a subtle big difference between being careless and carefree. So I'm more carefree now, which is actually bringing me better results.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, that's one of the other transition that I think when I was in my 20s, definitely much more type A, much more go-getter, go ahead, like, and then this whole I think this whole social journey also, I learned a lot, grow with the momentum. There were also times that were tough, personal challenges, humbles me in many ways through spirituality over the past few years as well.
Yeah, totally. I have a tougher question here. How do you handle criticism or negative feedback when you're trying to build all this big followership and visibility? Because it's very natural that once you are talking to more people, you're showing yourself up. Not everybody is gonna like you. You can't make everyone happy. So, how do you handle that?
I think something I've come to realize over the past few years as part of the unexpected or consequences or downside of building personal brand, or what I wish I know, is that when your visibility grows quickly, the narratives others see can start to run ahead of who you actually are, or more precisely, the version of you who are still becoming. So for me, building a personal brand was never really about this image or popularity or gaining likes, followers. It really always started out with sharing what I was learning, experimenting and building in the public. I do genuinely believing in that, and being honest and authentic about my journey of being a career pivoter. Um, But as my audience grow, people became to project, I guess, their version of the story onto me. When I go to cafes or meetups, or every time I meet someone, they'll be like, "Oh, you're such a, LinkedIn influencer, or you're the most famous person I knew on LinkedIn, or you're LinkedIn famous," as they would say. And while I appreciate that recognition and enthusiasm, it can also feel, honestly, quite flattening. I never see myself as someone who's like this influencer or who grows followers. I've always been a problem solver. Like, I love solving really hard problems, and constantly learning through doing and experimentation. I think that fast growth, for a period of time, my followers were skyrocketed, especially I think in 2022 and 2023. Um, I think it created a version of me that was very aspirational, and I still genuinely believe in that version of her. But I what I didn't fully grasp at the time was how visibility can create so much pressure, pressure to perform, to preserve a perception, to live up to an ideal. Um, and when there's momentum, it's easy to overlook like blind spots in growth, for example, because there were so many people cheering you. Um, but sometimes need to hear the hard feedback or to reflect on where I need to grow. And sometimes the community aren't necessarily always giving you the right kind of feedback and the right way. And I think it's really important for us to stay grounded, especially in today's fast moving, environment, right? Everybody is learning all the time. Nobody is a master unless you're the Andrew Carpathy of the world. But I think the biggest learning I had over the past year or so, 2024 was really a year of reset for me. Um, because of a number of like work challenges, personal challenges with health and family. It really taught me to slow down, not so much in ambition, but really in staying grounded, to stay rooted in substance, to make more room for, the beginner mindset again and being curious, to reflect honestly and candidly, to look at the blind spots and to zoom out to like what's happening. And I think this is a more quieter, durable growth than the ones that are being out there. And I have to say, I actually really enjoy that more than the spotlight of getting the likes and people coming to me and say, "You're LinkedIn famous." I don't really appreciate that, to be honest. But over the past year, as I part of growing this community, for example, with teams, I really enjoy how I did not have to be an expert to inspire people. I create so much room together with my chief of staff, Petma. We were able to amplify others, to elevate others, to share what's best inside the community, to share what they learn, and share that wisdom with everybody. And it's so much more joyful for me in that sense of like being able to amplify others and lifting each other up. So I think um, that's the next phase of growth that I'm excited about.
Thank you, Shivi, for being so authentic. You have touched upon some real human challenges here. I love it, what you are doing, because it is helping them when they reach out to someone else. At least you're giving them actionable feedback. Because that was another thing when you were sharing about your experience when people give feedback, and you have to really filter it out because you don't know from what place it is coming. Maybe they are just casually saying something, not thinking too much. So, as women, we do take it very, very seriously. So I constantly remind myself, is it like a real feedback, actionable? Can I do something? Should I learn, or it's better to ignore it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you are having some frameworks on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, some fun question. What is next for Shivi?
That's a good question. I've been thinking a lot too, because with so much changing, there opens up so many more possibilities. I think it's in the spirits of this journey. If I think about building my next phase of my career, really in the era, I think it's thinking about there's going to be a lot of change to society. So how can we show up? How can we, build better experience to inspire people? I'm always a mission-driven person. So I always think about not just like the product, but also, reinventing myself, doing servicing as an act. So how can I make less foreign, less feel like a silence job killer? How can I make it fun for people to play and use it as a way to upskill themselves? And it drives business outcome. So I'm trying to learn how to craft that work to make meaningful impact and also at the same time help me keep building my skill set in the way that I want to see. It's going to be a pretty interesting era.
Yeah, yeah, it's changing at the speed of light. So really trying to keep up with it. Yeah. So tell
Yeah.
me, Shivi, because we are like really trying to help women and allies and others who want to become more visible overall in your career, if you have to reflect back, would you do it again, building this professional network on LinkedIn? And if you were not in LinkedIn, for example, if you just imagine yourself, I'm just trying to help the listeners what they should do. So reflecting back, what would you do, like the younger Shivi will do?
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer it from a couple of perspective. We talk about visibility, but we focus overly on LinkedIn throughout our conversation. When I started it, the time was different, right? Gen AI hasn't exploded. So if I were to give advice, building, creating visibility right now and growing their career, the way how I would think about it, a couple. First, build the skills that you have the most leverage so that you have something to share. Second, I think of visibility both internal and external. So we touch upon some of that. Obviously, me working at LinkedIn helps with it, but you can also be very intentional about creating the visibility you want inside your company through sharing like a newsletter or signing up to do workshops for your team, like demoing a feature, for example, how you prototype. That has been like one of the most easy and hot, latest popular workshop topics. So how can you be of service to your team and to your bigger company? That's how you can build, visibility inside, right? How can you manage up? That's a big part. Even still have a lot of work in that regard. I have to say that. There's a lot of also mindset work that women can do, around overcoming imposter syndrome and start sharing publicly on LinkedIn and think of your career as a career, like a book that you're writing, and each job is just a chapter in that book. So I think sharing on LinkedIn, again, I would anchor on your why and creating optionality for work. But I think building the right skill and sharing that internally, building that what's in front of you is just important, if not more. I think it's more important than sharing outside. And then the outside will become a byproduct that comes with that. And then definitely try to use a lot of tools to speed up. I mean, the first draft, but also, for the content that you kind of want to speak your journey, speak with your hearts, collaborate. Don't just, oh, write a post about AI PM and then just copy and paste it. Like, don't do that, right? You should make it a co-pilot, right? Like a co-author and collaborator with you. I think that will make it much easier to start and much easier to put yourself out there. Like, for example, I have a lot of times that I need to learn how to reframe messages that project optimism when there are a lot of bad news in the room, right? For whatever reason. So how do you do that? That's a skill. And I ask AI to coach me to do that on how to reframe and etc. So I think that's one other things that women can do. Make it your best friend that help you to grow together.
Yeah, I love what you said. Hone your skills and then do the best job at your current work, but then don't remain the best kept secret, both inside organization and outside. So that's where you leverage LinkedIn. If one is just posting on LinkedIn and not doing work, then all these negative associations may come. So the best way to address is that you become the superstar and then let the world know about it.
I think if you share first inside your company, like W, right? Share 4 years or 9 years, I think she said, inside before she start her perspectives newsletter. And I also think that, a lot of times you're just gonna change your mindset to think that sharing on LinkedIn is performative. You have to think about it's sharing your knowledge. So make sure if you feel comfortable having the conversation with your manager first, for example, before you share, I encourage that. And then share your company stuff too, right? So then it becomes, kind of like your advocate for your company, like the products that you build, the lessons that you learn and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think it's also good that you first test with your internal safe audience in the company, have back, and then go outside if somebody is just starting out. But of course, if somebody is a seasoned professional, then they have been already posting, then the advice is a little different for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I enjoyed learning about your journey. It was fun to have you on the conversation. Very, very inspiring. Thanks for
Thank
taking
you.
the time to chat.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is an original production of Women in Product. Follow us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or the Women in Product YouTube channel. Leave us a review so that others can discover us or share this episode with others. Original music provided by Jimmy Hahn.